Randall ignored the faces. He was walking towards one of the last floors at Monsters Inc., alongside with Sullivan and Wazowski, and not surprisingly, every single monster present in the factory was staring at him. Sullivan had told everyone about his return, but the others' workers were quickly obvious of not getting used to the idea yet. The looks said that they were sending Randall weren't really exactly friendly kind, and those who didn't sent him a little hostile glare and simply turned around and looked somewhere else, except for Fungus, who fainted. Randall, who had dropped Rex off at the daycare before meeting up with Sullivan and Wazowski, and had to admit about spending some time away from his young nephew, which was quite a relief. Things weren't going too well. Rex had woken up in the middle of the night, crying and started calling for Sophie, and Sully, who rather desperate of Randall, tried his very best to comfort the little one, but he hadn't succeeded. It had been a couple of chaos until Rex, who didn't want his uncle around to be treating him like a perfect stranger, eventually managed to cry himself to sleep. After a couple of hours, Randall did the same thing in his own bedroom. They had both fallen down in a mess this morning, and Rex had been crying for the entire taxi ride to the apartment to the factory, and Randall had a headache, even though he was actually wearing his glasses to work. Sullivan had divided Randall's first day at work into 2 parts. Before going to lunch, he was going to observe Mike in the action, and then after lunch, the little green monster was going to help Randall practice in his comedy skills in the simulator, try different things out, to get some tips and so on. Randall would rather not cut his own fawns off before or spending the entire day alone with Wazowski, but had accepted Sullivan's suggestion in order not to let his Bim being the only clown. Observing Wazowski was okay. Randall had camouflaged for the entire rooms with the green eyeball, just staying down there in the door as he waited for the other ones to do his job. The purple monster had found the acts of Wazowski accidentally to hurt himself, but most entertaining ones. When the job was done and they exited together, Mike had always told Randall that the kid they just made laugh was particularly a difficult one. Randall was always growled and replied, but wished that he could stay invisible and get the hell away from there. After a long lunch with Sullivan, Wazowski, and some of her friends from the factory, it was time for Randall to practice on his own comedy skills with Mike. Sullivan promised to check on them at some point, but he had some other business to take care of from his office with, so he left the 2 monsters to themselves and prayed that both of them would get straight. "Okay, Randy boy." The purple monster grimaced at his own face and faced Wazowski, and he could hardly believe that the guy actually managed to piss him off during his first moment of their lesson. "Let me see your best." The eyeball gestured to Randall and tried to put the simulator on right away. "Come on, Randall. I can help you improve if you don't show me what you've got to work with." Randall walked very slowly over to the simulator. It felt like he was about to perform an exam, and he did felt nervous. Nervous and afraid of failing, and this was all new to him. He was used to be the second top scarer, but he had never done this before. What if he turned out just to be mediocre? Anyone in the crowd? What if he wasn't so good enough in his work and he wasn't there any longer? What if he didn't get to work here and didn't get to see Sullivan anymore? "I'm starting it, Randall." The lights went out of the room and fell silent as Mike turned on the machine. Randall opened the door and the simulator poked his head through. The child was asleep, and it felt like before. He could only sliver over to the goddamn brat and scare the crap out of him. But that would be an easy task. But this was complicated. Mike watched the purple monster on screen. He looked insecure. The green one didn't understand exactly why Sully had done to Randall, but no matter how hard it was to help, and of course the lizard had definitely changed. He was nothing like he did before. Nothing before. Mike suddenly felt the view of compassion over him, and started talking to the other monster again. "Randall, are you okay?" The words that caused the lizard to turn his head on Mike. His emerald eyes reflected the insecurity he was feeling. "I don't know. What am I gonna do? You spent the hours watching me this morning." "I know, but you..." Randall lowered his gaze. "You're good at this." Mike's expression changed, and he looked at Randall, and for the first time in years, he saw the student that he met in college, the monster who looked up on him. Man, Sully had performed the magic here. Mike didn't really know what to respond to Randall's last utterance, so he simply chose the thing to enter his mind. "Thanks, but I'm sure you're not bad after. Just give me your best go." "I'm not actually funny, Wazowski. I don't know any jokes. What am I gonna do?" "You don't have to tell jokes. Just fall over, crash into things, put a silly pattern." "No!" Randall snapped, and it caused the other to jump out of his chair. However, when the purple one spoke again, Mike realized the sore sadness on his face that he never did before. I don't want to make a fool of myself. In a second, Mike understood that Randall wasn't just being difficult. He was being afraid to laugh at it. The green monster remembered some of the things that Sully had told him about Randall's past, and he could fully understand why the scaly one didn't want to spend his days acting like a clown. I see. He went over to the simulator and placed himself next to the monster. I totally see. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have suggested that. Randall let out a deep sigh and ran a hand down through his fawns. It's okay. It's just, I don't mean to be difficult. But I mean, I'm just so nervous about the thing. You know what it's like to try your best friend, but never succeeded, and Mike lifted his hand. Excuse me, I don't know, but I don't know what it's like. Randall, have you been smoking something? What do you mean? The lizard asked, looking confused. Come on, don't tell me you haven't forgot about college. Remember how hard I worked, and how hard I tried, and I still don't succeed? Sully had to cheat in order to, when the scare games, and I got kicked out of school, and you were saying that I don't know what it's like to fail? Randall's eyes winced a bit and the green one went on. I know this very well, and it might be the second best, or at least the third or fourth. Sure, I'm among, I guess, the best others now, but come on. Like the first time ever in my entire life, I am going to do something that I've been admired for. A couple of months ago, I was scaring the assistant. Of course, Randall then sat down at the edge of the simulator and didn't say anything for a while as Mike's words sank in. The monster sat down right next to him, and for a moment the scaly one wanted to tell Wazowski to leave him alone. However, what if the eyeball had just told him just to think? I've never thought of that. He curved his lips upwards. Thanks for telling me. No problem. They sat there for a while without speaking, and the silence was a bit awkward, but Randall didn't seem to care. It was okay. It was perfectly okay. After their little break, Mike and Randall decided to get something to drink from the cafeteria. It was quiet through the hallways in the days of Monsters, Inc., and now that everyone else was working and they didn't run into a single soul on the way there. As they walked by a big door, Mike suddenly stopped, clearly thinking of something. He took a hold of Randall's arm and lowered it towards to a whisper. Can you keep a secret? Sure, the lizard was a bit surprised from Wazowski's sudden change of manner, but didn't really care. He was probably going to tell him about the stupid surprise for his stupid girlfriend or something. It's here. Quick, hurry. Mike picked out a key and hurried over to unlock the door. Once he was finished, he pulled Randall inside and unlocked it again. Again, promise you won't tell Sully? Yeah, what's the big deal? Mike lowered his voice even more, and Randall tried to concentrate on what he was saying. I'm fixing the door. What door? Boo's door! Mike pulled Randall closer. They shredded it, but I'm putting it back together. It's a big surprise for Sully. What do you think? Is that even possible? I mean, will it still work? I don't know. I wanted to give it a go. So what's there to lose? Randall looked over at Mike's project, and at this point, it was just a pile of wood. I'll probably take you a while. Sure, it'll probably take like months. It's nice though. It's like saving the world's biggest puzzle. I have been actually working here sometimes while Sully has been hanging out with you, Randall. Mike smiled, and Randall felt a little uncomfortable and wanted to say something. I really will appreciate it when it's finished. I hope so, but remember, you can't tell him. I won't. Thanks for showing me. You're welcome. Mike's smile grew wider as he eagerly went on. You know, Randall, I was actually wondering if you wanted to help rebuild it. You're a close friend of Sully, and I thought it would mean a lot to you if you... No. Randall's interruption came to a surprise on Mike, who then stated, however, the smile slowly returned to the face as the lizard explained. I'm his friend, sure, but you're still his best friend, so I think you should do this for him. I've gotten to know him lately, and I must say, if you know that means a lot to him too, I'm not here to steal him away from you. Thanks. Mike stood still a little puzzled. However, Randall's words sunk in, and the smile became a little warmer. Thanks, Randy. After they had gotten their drinks, Mike and Randall headed back to the simulator. Mike really wanted to get Randall to give it a go this time. You don't have to make a fool of yourself. You have to show me. You watched me hours this morning. Wazowski, please. I'm so uncomfortable about this. Fine, I'll enter the room with you, but you'll have to come up with something funny yourself, and you just need to practice. The simulator was still on, and both monsters entered the fake room. It was dark, and they had to spend more time to get used to it. Eventually, Mike tried to push Randall forwards. Come on, say something. Wake the kid up. Don't push me, Randall hissed. You wake it up, it's your field, but you're supposed to try it. Don't you? You can't see me, watch me forever. Give it a go. Nobody's looking. But what do you want me to do? You're not helping here. I need tips. Randall gave Mike a push in return, and the green monster almost fell over. Hey, be careful. Show me. What do I say? Okay, go over there, wake the kid up and tell a joke. Something fun you find funny. But I've told you, I'm not funny. Come on, you just have to have a sense of humor. Mike poked at each other without even knowing the ticklish spot on the body. Randall jumped and Mike poked at him again. Ticklish, huh? Stop it, Wazowski. Seriously. Mike didn't stop. He loved Randall's reactions with his poking, and the more he continued, the more Randall laughed. Stop it, god damn it. At least you know how to laugh. The little green monster continued his friendly torture, and the lizard tried to push him away several occasions, but with the limbs that were weak from the laughing, eventually he had managed to pull himself together and push Wazowski once and for all. The round monster lost his balance and rolled over across the floor and crashed into the wall on the other side of the room, causing a collection of footballs to roll down from the shelf and bounce the entire room, except for one that landed on Mike's mouth. It took a couple seconds when the balls stopped rolling until Randall noticed that there were little sounds in the room, but began to think he wasn't sure what he was hearing. But he realized something was happening and turned his mind and saw that the robot had sat up. It was laughing. From across the floor, Mike had tried to say something with the mouthful of football, but before he managed to express himself clearly, one of the walls in the simulator lifted and revealed the furry monster's presence in the large auditorium. That was great. I think you'll be very good, Randall. Sully put down his napkin and it was later in the afternoon where he and Randall got back to the lizard's apartment with Rex. They all sat down around the kitchen, eating pizza, and Randall was wiping Rex's face from the ketchup. I'm not sure. Trust me. When I saw it today, it was brilliant. I've never had any working teams like that before. Sully was still talking about Randall and Mike's Go Simulator, which had convinced the two of them that they should work together as a team. When you're working together like that, you don't have to worry about being laughed at, Randall. You're with Mike, and there's two of you. Trust me. He doesn't mind being laughed by a child. Randall just thought about it for a moment, and even though he had done nothing to think about the past hours, he hadn't been able to work in a team with Wazowski. But Sullivan was right. It would make him feel better if he cried funny on behalf of someone else. Besides Wazowski, who hadn't been around that all day, and he had been misunderstanding and helpful, Randall had begun, God forbid, happy to have him there. Another sob from Rex's interrupted Randall's thoughts, and the little monster had been crying for less non-stop since they had picked him up at daycare. Probably dead tired from last night. You want to go to bed, Rex? Rex, of course, Randall's voice spoke in the calmest voice, but there was no hiding the desperation beneath it. It was so frustrating beyond explanation, and felt terrible at the fact that Sullivan was there to see how much his own nephew hated him. No! Rex didn't want to make it easier for his uncle. He started crying even worse and threw his plate on the floor. Rex, you're tired. Randall gave it another try. Are you sure you don't want to get some sleep? I want my mom! Your mom is coming back very soon, but right now you have to... Ully! Rex is crying in yet another pitch, as he reached all four of his arms towards Sully. The blue one felt uncomfortable. This was Randall's nephew. Yet again, he wanted something to reach out to him. I think your uncle's right, Rex. Sully then looked at Rex to Randall, and then over at Rex again. I think you're getting a little tired. Come on, let's get you to bed. Uncle Randall can read you a story. No! Rex was still sobbing, eventually nodded his head in an unmistakable yawn. You want to read story? The little monster was still sobbing every now and then, as Sully was brushing his teeth, but calmed down once he was comfortably tucked in, and beneath his bed sheets and the old blanket. He fell to sleep straight away, and Sully didn't even have to finish the last page on the book. The blue monster watched him sleep for a little while, before he headed back to the living room where Randall was waiting. He's sleeping. Sully sat down on the couch. He was really tired, Randall. Don't take it personal, it's just, I'll work as a team with Wazowski. Randall sat down next to Sully with a blank expression, and all of a sudden change of subject came into the process with the blue one. Oh, okay, that's great. You want me to start real tomorrow? Sure, if you're up for it. I mean, I'm up for it. He took a glance at the clock on the wall. It's getting a little late. Perhaps you should... Randall, Sully placed his hand on the other monster's shoulder. It's okay if you don't want to. You don't want to talk about Rex? I understand. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, and you never will. Randall's sudden sharp snap caused Sully to jump in surprise, and he was just sitting on the edge of his seat as the purple one poured out his feelings. You'll never understand. You'll never know what it's like to be unpopular, and what it's like to be everyone else's last pick. You're popular, everyone loves you. And I just look at Rex and I'm his goddamn uncle, and he still prefers you. Everyone could see that I'm not even allowed to even read him a goddamn story. That's just that. Hostile words left out of his lips, and Randall felt unfamiliar, burning feeling from behind his eyes. He tried his best to blink his tears away, but gave up straight away, as there was no use in trying. The tears were simply too many to hold back. I should have seen something along, Sullivan, he sobbed loudly, and the blue monster pulled him to his chest for instinct. The purple one in his face and his soft fur allowed the crying to take over him. No one will ever like me. No one will ever care about me, and I'll never be anything. I just ended up being the runner-up everything I do. I'm Rex's only family member except Sophie, and he still hates me, and I... Shh. Sully stroked his back gently. Shh. He will warm up to you. Just trust me. You'll wait and see. He won't. A kid hates me. Randall looks up and tried to dry his face. While there was a little use in it, it was soaked in tears right away. Let's just face it. Nobody's ever going to see me else than a failure in the second place. A jerk, a criminal, a loser. I don't consider you any of those things. Yes, you do. Randall. Sully then took a hold of Randall's head in a bit in position, allowed him to look directly in the eyes. I don't. Then what do you consider me? A couple of seconds passed. As complete silence. Then without further warning, the blue monster pulled Randall's head a little closer to his own, and for a half second they gazed at it deeply into each other's eyes. The free pairs of hands were shaking. Sully closed his eyes, and the two hearts were running wild. Randall couldn't swallow. Sully had trouble breathing. When their lips finally met each other for the first time, it wasn't without insecurity. Both monsters were shaking. Both felt a little nauseated, but both were terrified ever than before in their lives, and it still felt so right, so fulfilling, so natural, so good.